What's up, everyone? My name is Matthew Arreyin. I'm a composer and cellist, and today I'm asking the question, what's the point of writing music? Once in a while, doesn't happen often, but once in a while, I'll have just like the smallest existential crisis, and I have to figure out why I keep doing this thing that we call compose, right? Why am I doing this still? And, before it gets exploded out of proportion and I go down the rabbit hole of why it exists, I should probably just dial it back a little bit and ask more simple questions like, do I even like music? Do I like music? If you're facing similar questions like these, maybe you're not liking the music that you're writing or the music that your friends are writing, then maybe you have to just follow that up with a simple question like, who am I composing for? Now, very frequently, this can be ambiguous. You don't even think about who you're writing for. You just at some point in your life decided that you were going to compose because that was just like the best way for you to express yourself creatively. And I think about this in two ways. The first of the two ways is you're writing to be part of a community. Now, if you think about it, music is one of the OGs of social media, right? It is a social medium. I mean, people in communities got together at a certain point and, in addition to doing like cave paintings and whatever it was that people were doing back in time when music was formed, which obviously could have happened when humanity was formed. Yeah, they were just trying to feel connected to each other. They were trying to express their shared values in a sonic form. As a group, they were trying to feel connected to each other with their voice, with their instruments, whatever instruments they had available to them at the time that they probably made with their own hands. And so I think that these fundamental roots still persist to this day. Music still functions as a social medium. So then when you're writing to be part of a community, your choices as a composer creatively are being largely shaped by whatever it is the group that you want to associate yourself is doing. So if you're in the contemporary concert music sphere, you're probably making choices to align yourself with that sphere, right? So in the contemporary concert music world, there are all kinds of ways that you can align yourself with the group. You can use extended techniques. You can use non-traditional instrumental ensembles. You can write music for the voice where singing is not the primary technique that they're using. They could also be like speak singing, like Sprechstimme, which is what Arnold Schoenberg was doing over 100 years ago. Not really considered an extended technique, so to speak, but sonically you would start to align yourself more with what that group is doing and what the sound of that group is in a very general sense, right? Obviously, there would be some personal touches that go into that, and taste plays a role as well, but the choices are largely going to be shaped by the group. And so that's sort of the first way that I think about it. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's an absolutely fine way to approach composing. But going back to the original line of questioning, if you like music or if you like your own music or the music people around you are writing, if the answer to any of those questions is, yeah, I'm not a huge fan of this stuff, I don't really like what people around me are writing, I definitely hate what I'm writing, then maybe you just have to figure out that maybe writing to be part of the group is not a satisfying approach or a satisfying justification for continuing to be a composer. For me, at a certain point, it wasn't enough. So it happened to me. So in 2018, I wrote a piece for a very well-known ensemble here in Chicago, and after the premiere, I felt extremely weird and alienated. I hated the piece, absolutely hated it. That piece doesn't exist anymore. And it wasn't because of the ensemble. They did a beautiful performance, a beautiful interpretation, super sophisticated and lovely. But the piece itself was just not mine. It was not mine. It was defined by the group. It checked off all the boxes to be a contemporary music piece, but it didn't check any boxes to be a me piece. It didn't have anything that felt personal. It didn't, like all of the choices, like the harmony, the orchestration, the choice, like the effects that I used for the instruments, they were all just like as if I had filled out a form, like one of these scantrons that you do in school. Very weird. I mean, it's not that the piece was bad necessarily. It just wasn't mine. If you attach someone else's name to it, you would not know the difference. I mean, if you tried to do that with like a visual artist that has a very, very iconic visual style like Picasso or Jackson Pollock or, any artist that you like, Van Gogh, and you attach someone else's name, you'd be like, wait a minute. Are you sure? Because this definitely looks like that artist's work. Now, if you did that with my piece, you would not know the difference, right? Completely anonymous. And so that leads me to the second way, which is writing for yourself. Now, it sounds selfish. Right out of the gate, it seems like a selfish approach, but in reality, it wasn't. It wasn't a selfish approach, and I'll get into the reasons why in a bit. But the main reason why I had to do this was to feel like less alienated from my music. I wanted to feel like it was mine. I wanted to hear the piece and know that's my piece, right? And so that was a huge concern for me. And it took months. It took months of really, really researching and investigating not just the sounds that I was going to use, but myself, my own tastes, my own values, so that I can sort of like have like this rebirth, so to speak. I always think about that moment as a pivot point for me as a composer, away from thinking too much about what I wanted others to hear, what I wanted to accomplish to align myself with the group. And I started thinking more about what is it that I want to hear. And this might seem super obvious for some of you listening. Maybe that was just something that I took a long time to get to, a realization that took me forever to get to. The second thing about writing for yourself that I didn't even realize was super important for me was how it impacts my emotional stability and my mental stability. And I didn't realize this until my son was born, a couple of years after this experience happened. So when he was born, I basically didn't have time for anything. I mean, other parents, if you're watching this, you know what it's like, right? When you have a baby, there's no time for anything. There's no time for sleep. There's no time for cooking. There's no time for hygiene. You're just surviving. You're in survival mode. It's really, really, really intense. And so at that time, I didn't write anything. And, when you combine that with sleep deprivation, with a poor diet, with lack of hygiene, it sort of becomes sort of like a storm of things happening all at the same time. So I had to really, really evaluate how I could reincorporate my creativity back into my daily life so that I could be a better person for the people who need me. And ultimately, even doing 5, 10, 15 minutes a day of something creative was enough to sort of develop that habit, almost like, maintaining a healthy diet, like eating food on a daily basis, drinking water on a daily basis, brushing your teeth, all of these little things that we incorporate into our self-care to make us feel like normal people. I had to think about composition in the same way. Even if what I was doing was inconsequential, irrelevant, that I threw in the trash, if I was activating those neurons and those neural pathways, I felt better as a human being, so that my son, when he needed me, I was there. And so you may be going through a big life change that's occupying a lot of your time. You maybe have a new pet. Maybe you moved across country because you got a new job in another state. Maybe you just had a baby like I did a few years ago. Maybe all of these different things are happening at the same time for you. Maybe you just had a baby, you just got a new pet, you just moved across state. Be patient. It's going to be okay. Just figure out that if your lack of creativity is having a big impact on you mentally, emotionally, then you may actually need it for yourself and not so much for the community. Whether you're composing to be part of a community or whether you're writing mostly for yourself, for your own self-care routine, your mental health, your emotional stability, so that you can be a better person for the people who need you, honestly, there's always going to be some kind of overlap, right? It's impossible. If you're writing in a contemporary concert music, your music will at some point, hopefully be performed live, right? So there is a dependency on the community. There is a dependency on collaborators. There is a dependency on conversations with people who are experts in the instruments that you're writing for. You need that. You need those things as a kind of feedback, because in music, it's unlike painting or architecture or other disciplines where you do have this constant immediate feedback as you work. And so, I mean, if you're working in a digital audio workstation, a DAW, then honestly, you have that constant feedback. But if you're a contemporary concert music, writing music that is not reproducible through a software, then you do need people. Plain and simple, right? You need people. So you can get you can get to a certain point when you're writing for yourself, but you need people to get you across the finish line. So there's that communal aspect to it. But if you're writing mostly to be part of a community, you can't say yes to everything, right? You can't just make everyone else happy and not yourself. What would happen if you say yes to a ton of projects and then you're completely swamped and it's completely draining you emotionally, physically, on every level, and you can't even function on a day-to-day basis? That would also be bad, right? You can't cater completely to make others happy without taking care of yourself. You also have to maintain a balance of figuring out, okay, this aspect of it is really, really good for me because I love to be part of the community, but I can't say yes to everything. So I need to reserve a little bit of space for myself, for my tastes as well, because I want to like my music too. I don't want to just do all this and make others happy, but completely feel alienated from my work. We just have to figure out what is it that motivates us the most and what is most important to us so that we can continue to do this thing that is so important to us, expressing ourselves sonically as composers, right? When you have this balance, though, and you understand what the main motivation is, whether it's for the community or for the self, it becomes a lot easier to sort of continue to justify being a composer. To go back to the original question, what's the point? Well, I'm doing it because I want to be part of a community, or I'm doing it because I need to be better for my family. And composing makes me happy. So the motivation then is easy to leverage. It's a lot easier to sort of like, pull this discipline out of thin air. And honestly, like, discipline is totally unnecessary, but I'll maybe talk about that in a different video. I'll be talking about different things in the future. Like, I'm going to be talking about how you can leverage music that you love to write music that you feel a deeper connection to. I want to write about how you can do some pre-compositional processes, like what I call preparing the palette, how you can create formal diagrams to have a better sense of the architecture of your music, and so many other things. So if you're interested in seeing things like that, then yeah, stick around and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks.